Friends, welcome to Inside Out. This month, we're going to take a trip to the Waccamaw National Wildlife Refuge between Horry County and Georgetown County. How about Surfside? Well, they're doing an archaeological dig, and we're going to see what's happening. Bonfire's going to cook up some great ribs for us in Conway. Plus, there's some great shagging going on in North Myrtle Beach. And how about a little horsing around on the Traviana Horse Farm? Well, it's all coming up right now on this month's edition of Inside Out. So I got up this morning and wondered, what do you wear to an archaeological dig? Well, I certainly said blue jeans. But look, my guest, Ben Burroughs, he got all dolled up for this interview. You certainly weren't digging in an outfit like that.
Well, I do most of my digging in historical papers, not in the dirt, so that's why.
Ben, tell us about your position with Coastal Carolina University.
Well, Diane, I'm the director of the oh-ree County Archive Center at Coastal Carolina University. A lot of people get that confused when I say oh-ree County Archive Center. They think it's with the county government, but it really isn't. It's funded through the university, and they allow me to research the local history, mainly of oh-ree County, but we also do Georgetown, but mostly oh-ree County.
We're in Surfside today at 3rd Avenue South and Willow Drive South. And this is the new archaeological dig that's been going on for, Ben says, for how long?
Since about October, last October.
Wow, and this is a very prestigious dig for our area here in Surfside. Tell us why, Ben.
Well, it is the site of a plantation that dated back into the 1700s and on up through the 1800s called the Ark. And a lot of people had forgotten that the Ark Plantation existed, but basically Surfside Beach sits on the former plantation of the Ark.
How did this dig actually come about? I mean, how was this site discovered? I mean, it's been here a long time.
Yeah, it's been here, and you know, in the past, people knew of it. As time goes on, people kind of tend to forget or not talking about it. Well, I had heard about it years ago, and when I started working at Coastal, digging into the local history, this is one of the things that I thought, I want to know more about that. I knew that it existed, but I didn't know much about the facts of it. And so I started digging around in the historical records, looking and talking to people who might help. And little did I know, but there were some other people in the community also doing the same thing. Well, back about a year or so ago, we finally all met each other, and we were able to put our information together and get a better picture of exactly what the Ark Plantation was.
So I understand the plantation was a very big one, but yet the house was smaller.
Right. It was what I'll call a working plantation. It wasn't a show house, but it was the acreage of the plantation was 3,194 acres, which was very large. The house was not maybe as fancy as you might think of. It wasn't like some Brook Green plantation house, but it was a working plantation house that sat on this location. It was described as a large house for its time, though. By modern standards, it probably isn't that large, but in those days it was considered a large house. We don't know much about the ornamentation of the house and things like that because we don't have any record of what was inside. All we have is a partial picture taken many years after its heyday that just shows the corner of the house and part of the front porch that went across the house.
What do we know about the family who lived here? Well,
there were several through all these years. We know that in the 1700s there was a family, Stephen Peak, P-E-A-K. We believe that this is where the Peak Plantation was. We think it's the same thing. But the family that's most associated with it is the Tillman family. Elijah Tillman acquired the property in the late 1700s, and then his son inherited it. His name was John Tillman, and John is the one who lived here for his whole life. He was born, in around 1800 and lived to 1865. So it's really identified with him mostly.
Would they be related to the North Myrtle Beach Tillmans by any chance?
No, not at all. It's a totally different spelling of the name. These Tillmans were T-I-L-L-M-A-N, and the ones in North Myrtle Beach are T-I-L-G-H-M-A-N.
Ben, what did they do on this plantation? What did they grow?
Well, the records that we have, which come from old diaries in the 1700s, they refer to it as an indigo plantation. And as you probably know, indigo was an early crop for coastal South Carolina, mainly before the Revolution. It was growing a crop which was then harvested and then put through a chemical process to create indigo dye. So when you hear the indigo blue dye, that's what they were making here. Now, eventually, when rice came into being popular and they discovered that it would create great fortunes, most of the areas that were more suited for rice converted quickly to rice. And that's what happened on the lower Waccamaw area with those large rice fields around Brook Green and those other plantations. But rice up here was mostly upland rice. And the indigo grew better on the drier soil. So indigo lasted longer here than it did in the lower All Saints Parish. And they were growing indigo here on into the early 1800s.
I know that you're proud, as I am, that the town of Surfside Beach saw the importance in this piece of property, that they bought it up, allowed the dig, and hope to build a park here in the future.
Yeah, we owe a lot to Surfside Beach City Council for taking the step to seeing that this was preserved. And Diane, it's important for everybody to know that as a result of this project here at the Ark, the Surfside Beach Historical Society was reformed, and we've got an active group of citizens that live within the city of Surfside and close by that are very involved in that. The property was just about to be sold. And had it been sold, it was 3 lots. They were going to put houses on it. Probably would have lost some of these beautiful oak trees, and it would have been forever gone. So Surfside Beach, realizing the urgency, stepped forward and purchased the property, and now it's available for the community as a park.
And I understand there's going to be a big weekend here the first part of November.
Right. The first weekend in November, we're going to have a Surfside Beach Heritage Day Festival. And we hope to do this every year and highlight the culture and the history of Surfside Beach from its 1800s and 1700 periods.
Well, speaking of history, who are these diggers and what are they doing out here?
Yeah, aren't they great? They come out here, they're volunteers, and they work along with Susan McMillan is the lead archaeologist. And all these diggers are volunteers that work with her on projects. When this project came up, I spoke to Susan and said, wouldn't y'all like another dig? Because they were kind of backing off of doing any more. And she spoke to her volunteers about it, and they were all eager to do this. They really wanted to. And so they came back and have been working diligently since about October of 2015 until now. And we hope to get them back next fall to do part 2 of the dig.
I'm amazed, and I don't want to insult them, but most of them are older than me, and they're out here digging in the dirt day in on day out. So quite amazing and great volunteers. Let's talk about some of the things they found.
Okay, here are 2 of the most interesting things I think of. This is a silver dime from 1823. And it's got Liberty Head on it. That's a great find there, and you know, by having that date on it. The only thing that we found yet that actually has a date, so that's really exciting.
And a dime bought a lot back then.
Right, that's a lot of money. Somebody lost it. They probably looked for it, couldn't find it, but we found it.
Glad you did.
This other larger item is a brooch, a lady's brooch, that would probably date from the Civil War era, so 1861 to 65. And it's the type of brooch that would have held a photograph, and they found that here on the property. So when I look at it, of course, wonder, you know, whose picture was in it, and wish we had that picture
Knowing
still.
you and Susan McMillan, though, you're going to find out whose picture is in it.
We're going to try.
So tell me about this, Ben.
Okay, this is an old lightning rod that was found, and it would have run the length of the house across the roof and up on either end and then down into the ground to ground it. And it was found all bent up because we think that in the later years of the house, bulldozers came in here and pushed everything down and probably bent that all up.
Directly behind us, there's a little dig going on, and that nice volunteer showed me the different types of bricks. And there's a very purple-like brick, and there's also something that looks like coquina. What do you expect to find there?
Were they finding different things, building materials from different eras? They found a little bit of tabby, which was a really early colonial South Carolina building material. And they found what we call historic brick, which would have been, say, pre-1865. They're a little bit darker brick, as well as more modern bricks from the 1920s, and we think those bricks were used when the house was later converted into a hotel, and they probably fixed it up and maybe put some type of fencing in around the base of the house where it was raised up off the ground. And we're finding a combination of all three of those materials because the house has been here for so long. It was probably here, you know, before the Revolutionary War.
So Ben, out of all the things that you have found out about this Ark Plantation, what do you think is the most important part to our history?
Well, I think it's that it was right between the old broad road, which we call the King's Highway, and the Long Bay Road, which ran along the coastline, actually on the beach of oh-ree County. This house was situated right between the two, and all these travelers, including John Bartram, William Bartram, people from the Revolutionary War, and President George Washington, all passed through here, and some of them would have stayed at this house if they were heading north and waiting for the tide to be low in order for them to travel along the beach.
Do you think George Washington slept here?
Well, he didn't actually sleep here, but he slept right down the street, right down the road.
At Brook Green?
At Brook Green.
I'll tell you what, I just appreciate you doing this interview. I want you to know I've lived in oh-ree County for 32 years, and you are one person I have always wanted to meet and finally got to interview.
It was a pleasure.
Ben Burroughs, this is just awesome, and I hope this will be the first of many interviews with you, and thank you for preserving our history, which is so important to our future.
Thank you.